Welcome to Soltron. This is the video review for Miniforce, Brachy, Magneta. Here's how these figures scale with other figures. So these figures are a two-part combiner that combine into a Brachiosaurus. So let's start with orange. So we get a good look at his head sculpt. And this is a really great looking head. It's just got a really cool Miniforce style to it, so it's got the mouth plate and kind of ninja helmet like most of these figures do. And his aesthetic is just really great looking. He's got kind of like this blade arm. And then the other arm has this blaster on it, which is pretty good looking. So kind of like a shield look too. So he looks kind of like a construction robot with the black and orange coloring, and then as you can see there's hardly really like no kibble at all except for this shield on the arm. So really awesome looking robot. And then if we look at green, he's got a completely different aesthetic. They really don't look that similar. Orange has kind of a more rounded look to it. This one's more blocky looking, but really there's no reused parts. Everything is completely unique to these figures. And he's got a gun arm or a cannon arm, and then the other arm has kind of like this axe looking weapon. So that's pretty cool looking. Or you can just fold it over and then it makes kind of like an arm shield on this arm too. And then the head sculpt on this guy's a little bit more generic. I'm not as impressed with this head sculpt, but still not a bad looking head. It's got kind of a turtle vibe to it. So together, I think these robots, just their aesthetics, are really, really impressive. Probably like a 8 for the aesthetic. They just look really good, especially this orange one. I really like this guy, but the green one kind of brings it down a little bit for me. So they have really great looking proportions. But the big problem with these two figures is that their articulation is really poor compared to a regular Miniforce figure. They're missing a lot of articulation. Like these have fully functioning shoulders. Sometimes you get, very rarely you get bicep swivel, you get elbows, you get head articulation usually, and sometimes you get a waist swivel, and then universal hips. So this guy has most of the articulation you could expect. So he does have rotating head. It's got a decent amount of rotation, so you can get some expression on this figure. His shoulders do not rotate at all, which is a really big problem. So neither shoulder, they're both locked in place. So that is just poor engineering. These shoulders could have easily functioned to rotate forward. So that hurts this figure a lot. Especially this shoulder, there's no excuse for not making this one rotate at least. Especially now he can't even point his gun at anything. So he does have about 90 degrees in the elbow, so he can point his gun like this, but it would just look much better if he could straighten out his arm. He can move his arm outward this much, which is not very good. And then he does have a forearm swivel, but not a bicep swivel. So really poor arm articulation. And then this arm does not have a bicep swivel at all. It does have forearm swivel again. And it's got kind of an elbow, but it only bends this much, which is not very useful. And then he's got kind of this little tilt here on the wrist, I guess. So missing really important articulation here. You can't even point this sword at anything really. I mean, I guess you can point his arm out, but he can't even lift this arm to attack anybody. So that really takes away the play value. And then no waist articulation, even though it looks like it could. And then you get full range of outward kick, a good amount of forward, almost the full way, all the way backwards. And then you get, the knee is kind of in a weird place, but there is a fairly decent knee joint, not quite 90 degrees. And you get a weird transformation joint there. And then you do have ankle swivel, and then you also have ankle tilt. So leg articulation has almost everything except for a thigh swivel is the only thing that's missing. And you kind of make up for that with the ankle swivel. But really limited articulation in the arms, which really hurts this figure. And then you have the same issue on green. No rotation on the shoulders at all. And then you get less than 90 degrees on the cannon arm. So this guy really just cannot shoot anything with this. What's the point? He can't even raise this arm. So you can raise it outward at least, but he also cannot turn his head. So that's really unfortunate that they took out that piece of articulation on this figure. And then this shoulder is also static, even though it looks like, yeah, they could have probably fit in the engineering there to make it rotate. You do get kind of this reverse butterfly for the transformation, and then orange has that too. Oh, actually, no, he doesn't. Oh yeah, he does. So this does unpeg, but it's not a useful piece of articulation. And then this arm, not even 45 degrees on the bend for this. So he's not going to be really attacking anybody with this axe. And then no waist swivel on this guy either. And then full outward kick. 45 degrees on the forward kick. It's hampered by the skirt a little bit. You can move it out of the way. And then full backward kick. And then he does have a little bit of a knee, but it's pretty much not there. It's less than 45 degrees. And then no ankle swivel on this guy, but he does have ankle tilts. So that's the real big issue with these guys. It takes away a lot of the play value, is that they are missing so much articulation. So these guys both transform in kind of a similar way. So first you're going to push the head all the way down till it locks. They do have spring-loaded head gimmicks, so that's pretty cool. And then the brachio head is going to go all the way up. And then you're just going to rotate that into place and then move the head crest back. So you can see this is the brachio head, and the chest is going to be right here. And then this piece is going to rotate back. And this forearm, this whole blaster weapon and basically the shield on green are going to be the combiner ports. So that's where everything combines. So you're going to close this up over the fist. And then you're going to rotate the elbow. And then this is going to clip in place behind his back. And then you just make sure that's all nice and snug. And then there is one little piece of articulation where the waist swivels back. It doesn't really do anything in robot mode. And then you have the outward kicks you need to use. And then you bend the legs sideways to make them look more like brachiosaur legs. And you can see this guy's already coming along pretty good. He looks like the front of a brachiosaurus. And then you're going to rotate the feet around so the paws are facing forward. And then you have one little piece of articulation where you should bend the knees of the robot, and it just makes the brachio forelegs look a little bit more natural looking. So there you go, there's the front of the brachiosaur. And now you transform green kind of the same way. So you're going to push his head down till it locks. And then his gimmick, his button is right here in the chest. And then you rotate the axe arm around and leave the axe extended. And then there's a clip on the back of the forearm that's going to go to the back of his waist. This one doesn't have any waist articulation, so that part doesn't transform at all. And then the axe blades are kind of going to fold up around the fist. And then you clip that arm in place. And then this is actually going to turn upside down. And this arm becomes the tail of the brachiosaurus instead of the head. And then you rotate this little piece of armor. It is going to telescope out and cover the blaster piece and become the rest of the tail. And then the legs do the same thing. They butterfly out. And then use that second joint. And then these are already facing basically the right way. And then you just bend the knees again to give kind of the muscle of these rear legs. And now these two ports are going to peg in to the front of the body right here. So here's the combined Brachiosaurus. He's looking pretty good. Interesting color combination. The tail unfortunately kind of just drags on the ground back here, but he's got a really great looking aesthetic. The legs do kind of move, so you can simulate walking poses out of him, so that's nice. And you get a good amount of articulation thanks to these fake knee joints. The head also has a couple clicks of articulation, and he can also rotate, so you can almost look at where he's going, so that's pretty nice. But that's basically it on the articulation. The tail can kind of rotate on that elbow joint of the robot, but you're not going to get much use out of that. So this is an enormous figure. Here he is next to a ruler, so well over 12 inches. It's quite gigantic. And then here's a deluxe class figure. He's definitely big enough to crush a car. I'm not sure if that's to scale. I'm not really familiar with dinosaurs. And here he is with Super Tyra King. So if you're really into dinosaur combiner robots, maybe this is your thing. Like all the Miniforce figures, this guy is super solid. I'd rate him a 10 for durability. And then for fun factor, he's pretty fun to play with. I would say it's like a 7 for transformation and knocking off a few points because the articulation is lacking. If the articulation of these two robots was good, I'd probably rate it like a 9. It's a pretty fun figure. It's an interesting concept. And again, it would be cool if the two robots combine into a symmetrical docking combiner robot, but that's not really the design they're going for here. So if this is something that you're really interested in, you can order yours at Sirtoys. I'll leave a link in the description.